Platform.
Good evening and welcome to the People's Platform. My guest tonight is a globally renowned leader in transformative education, integral development, global peace and justice, who has dedicated his life to catalyzing human purpose and collective potential for integral, cultural and planetary transformation. He is also the co-founder of the Home for Humanity movement for human flourishing and planetary regeneration. I'm so pleased to welcome to the studio Professor Alexander Schieffer. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sonali. Such a pleasure to be here and on the People's Platform.
Thank you. Professor, you're on a quest to traverse all the countries in the world with the core question, how do we transform our divided world and endangered planet into an inclusive, regenerative, just and joyful home? This sounds like such a lofty goal. How do you propose to go about this? Take us through the process.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, it is probably life's biggest mission that ever landed, not only in my lab, but also with the co-founder of the Home for Humanity movement, Dr. Ramamani, my wife, where we worked actually all our life with leading and guiding and developing transformative processes that can lead to societal renewal. We are seeing, however, that the world is moving into ever greater forms of division, conflict with nature, conflict between people, conflicts between and within nations, that there is a need actually to find actually the new narrative that kind of connects humanity in a new way to creation, to the planet, because we are in a time which we profoundly see and believe where the stake of our species is, or the future of our species is at stake. We're living in highly uncertain times. We are witnessing ever greater catastrophes on not only on the climate front, but also on political and economic fronts. So we need to find ways to build systems that bring us together on the one hand, and that provide us with solutions for the future. And in the last 30 years, I've been working with, in particular with students, change makers, through transformative programs to build such futures locally in their own context, a lot in Africa, a lot in the Middle East, a lot in Asia. So across the globe in different cultural and societal contexts. And I could see how important the notion is also of different cultural narratives coming together to tap into their own creative potential to build the future. And that led us actually at one stage to see how do we bring the diversity of cultural narratives for the benefit of humanity and the planet as a whole into action in a time which is so crucial for either we renew or we fall back into ever greater divisions, which might lead actually to rather dramatic outcomes for not just for humanity, but for life on the planet. And having worked with change makers around the world and seeing the power of co-creation, working in co-creation across sectors, working across cultures also together and cross-pollinate, at the same time witnessing the urge and need that we come up with a new narrative that can really connect us and build a future which carries humanity as a whole into a future worth living in, we ask the question, how on earth are we going to participate as a movement, as a Homes for Humanity movement that we co-founded in this quest? And that was responded to literally with the vision of going to each and every country on the planet to find out and to listen to what are the most pioneering, the most creative, the most relevant solutions that we can find, culturally rooted, socially rooted, that can lead us into the future. So that is a one-home journey about it. It is not a personal travel, but is somehow a journey of humanity to uncover its potential to build the future, which is country by country shared with the world. So we are also co-harvesting knowledge in every country, like now in Sri Lanka, which is then shared with the world, with change makers who themselves work on transformative initiatives on their own grounds and begin to shape and work in a planetary community of driving the necessary change for the future.
Amazing. Professor, since much of your work revolves around societal transformation, we all collectively feel this need to integrate an increasingly fragmented world. Since you work at the grassroots level across communities, across divides, take us through your experiences and your findings about people who make up the earth, the masses, how broken people are because societal structures have broken them, have disappointed them, have dehumanized them.
God, you're touching on a very important theme. So maybe I just take you for a moment into the first 3 months of the One Home journey that we initiated, the 7-year journey. We call it actually a 7-year journey, 2024 to 2030, 7 years for 7 generations, looking for solutions that can carry us into the next 7 generations, but also connecting us to what has come before the generations. I'm saying that because much of the brokenness that we witnessed, for example, in Africa, where we're just coming from, is a profound disconnect from the past. Of course, these are the long arms of colonization which are still playing out, and actually not only through not healed trauma in individuals and in society, but also because, as I believe, colonization, this kind of dividing energy is still going on. How? The economic paradigm that is imposed. And as we see and can see with open and clear eyes, looking at the facts, it's an economic paradigm that creates wealth for few, and the gap between those who have nothing and those who have is widening ever more. COVID has tremendously widened this gap in an absurd way even further. So the brokenness of being economically excluded is very, very apparent in these places. The brokenness of seeking to reconnect also to their own cultural stories is equally present. And there's a connection between, because what we are seeing, in order to rebuild future new systems, organizations, social structures which are authentic to who you are, you need to have that connection to the original story, or to a story that is authentically connected. The next big divide, which is in all our face, is of course the divide from nature, from Mother Nature, you know. And this drama is painstaking because we can feel that we are literally killing the grounds under our feet that sustains us into the future. So we've seen this profoundly in Africa. There it's probably often playing out in its harshest way. But we also see, in terms of division, that so many stories, so many cultural stories are not playing part in the global narrative. We tell very few stories, primarily Western, European, American stories. I mean, in terms of the main narrative that is really driving us, that most of the world is following. A couple of other stories are now coming in, but the vast majorities of narratives is out, is excluded. The other big division that I still feel, and this is a subtle point, Sonali, but it's that the gender division. Many women are profoundly excluded. We saw profound oppression or patriarchy still moving on in many of our societies. Neo-patriarchy as well, societies where you don't even expect this moving back of strong male structures which kind of oppress a gender-balanced, dynamic evolution of society. So this is another major part of division that we also seek to bridge in the One Home journey, putting a particular emphasis also on women future builders in this journey.
You spoke of the need to bridge the divides. It is of paramount importance that we don't work in silos. You yourself work with an interconnected community of transformative scholar practitioners and others across sectors, across divides. And this is really powerful. Speak to us about the magic that this creates, the synergy.
You know, the thing is that innovation, which I studied around the world, happens always in the place in between. You know, when two or more different dimensions are coming together. We see this already in an ordinary couple. That's where innovation can happen and the new can be born. But equally when people with different perspectives, cultural perspectives, cross-sector cooperation is taking place, new approaches can happen, evolution takes place. I mean, nature shows it to us. It works ecosystemically. It works actually always in the interface, in cross-pollination throughout. And if I take even the example of Saroda, because it's so fresh, and I experienced it again, the origin of Saroda was actually the fusion between the cultural force that was very strong in Sri Lanka and still is, Buddhism, with Gandhiism, but also an openness to the world. So it was this play, almost playful engagement and fusion movement between different perspectives that led to a whole new, perspective then called Saroda, fully adapted in its own originally local way, but also not being stuck in a traditional perspective, but bring something new. I saw it powerfully in Africa again, because people have this capacity there, without stereotyping, but you feel the possibility there of connecting, of feeling you in your humanity, and in that connection of people among each other, the new can be born. And that's, by the way, while in all the drama we saw also in Africa, we saw even in places like refugee camps where people came with the biggest imagined trauma, with literally nothing in their hands and on their body, and yet found ways to innovate because they learned to bridge divides between cultures as refugees coming into a new culture in which they're thrown, or being forced to work together in order to create something fundamentally new. That's why we are so passionate about continuously co-creating. That's why I believe, also as an educator, this whole world of over-individualized education, me and my diploma, me and my degree, in order to take me forward, is an absurdity. Knowledge creation for the big themes of our time can only happen in learning and research, knowledge co-creating communities. I'm running since 18 years a PhD program for societal renewal. We also dub it sometimes PhD, Process for Holistic Development. Mm-hmm. The first thing is you bring your community with you into your PhD. You don't do it alone. You do it with the people you work with, which are surrounding you, in order to create solutions that fit into your place. And then you tap into your own, you cross the divide of disconnect to your own knowledge sources in your own societies, even if they're hardly tangible or existing, in order to bring the resource of your own knowledge base back into the knowledge creation process. These are the divides which are absolutely vital to build, to create innovation. Mm-hmm. People coming together, and the ecosystem that you bring has to bring different forces and capacities together. So not just you as the researcher, it might be facilitators, community people, entrepreneurs who allow in togetherness to manifest innovation also in reality. Because education is of little value if it doesn't arrive ultimately in new realities that we manifest, be it enterprises or community realities, but this is at the heart. That drives the journey also tremendously.
What you just spoke of is also harnessed by the power of culture and cultures coming together. Speak to us about that as well.
I do that happily also because this country, Sri Lanka, is also culturally so so rich. And yet you also, of course, struggled with bringing different cultural narratives here into balance, into co-creation. I mean, you went through your own very harsh journey and experience, which is, if I understand it well, is also still in the process of deep healing. But culture, in an interesting way, is the big blind spot on the planet. If you go, for example, and think economy, we kind of tend to believe there is only one way of doing economy. If you look carefully in the way how the global economy works, is a culturally impregnated form. It's Anglo-Saxon. Nothing wrong with Anglo-Saxon, but it's important to see that there is a certain cultural imprint, which excludes also other cultural imprints. So we are creating, if we focus only on systems which have one particular cultural imprint, we create monocultures. All of us who know even a little bit about agriculture know how dangerous monocultures are and vulnerable for collapse. Quite frankly, it's exactly what we are witnessing these days. If we bring culture into co-creation, and the great Ali Masrui, an African scholar, once said, not a single civilization has been built which was not the fusion of two or more different cultural impulses. So civilization is built, Renaissance movement across, come always when new impulses come in. Culture kiss each other on eye level, not on a domination level, but they begin to dance. The greatest time for European Renaissance was when the Arabs in Spain allowed the Christians and the Jews to be fully accepted member of society, and we saw in 12th, 13th century Spain one of the great renaissances, actually the Arab Renaissance, later then followed through by the European Renaissance. These are mechanisms which are at the heart of our collective well-being, which we tend to overlook because culture is such an intangible space. But I think we are so ready and ripe for Renaissance these days, for rebirthing processes, and therefore we need all our cultural wealths to come together. And the big Renaissance, if I may add that, Sonali, is, to my mind, you know, we experience ourselves in recent decades for the first time as a collective. COVID brought it also painfully to the fore. We suddenly felt we are in something here together. We feel the imminent danger of losing the very foundation of life for humanity. We have the internet, of course, which brings us together on a mouse click. So we get a sense for, I'm a global citizen, or I can be anywhere. And yet, to see how can global citizenship, or we like to call it Earth citizenship because it's more alive, the Earth, how can it honor the different cultural narratives that we have? So we're not falling into mono cultures, but we are bringing the whole of our cultural experiences and personal experiences into full flourishing.
You also work very closely with Saroda in Sri Lanka. Speak to us about that as well.
That is actually, it's a very beautiful story. It's about 2008. We were just completing a book on integral economics, which came actually about because we were looking at the economic situation in the world, and we felt, well, looking carefully and not even overly critically, we can see that the current global economic paradigm doesn't carry us into the future. So we asked the question, is the neoliberal approach to economics truly the only one? Like Maggie Thatcher once said, TINA, T-I-N-A, there is no alternative, T-I-N-A. And I said, this is actually not quite true. If you look around the world, you find quite a lot of alternatives, often in pockets, which in a way give pointers for more regenerative approaches to economics. Now, we searched the world and wrote this book on integral economics, highlighting these different examples of more regenerative forms of economics. And the book was almost ready, and we came across the case of Saroda. And all the books we are writing are not based on theory, but in direct relationship with the practice, with people we work with. Saroda, we didn't yet know at that time. So I picked up the phone, expecting to meet some person in the organization, and 2 minutes later I had the founder of the organizations, Dr. Ariyaratne, on the phone. And we had immediately such a beautiful conversation, and he said, please come over. And months later there was an opportunity for me to come. And coming to Saroda was a profound eye-opener, because Saroda, talking about division, Sonali, was one of the organizations where we felt who put the emphasis on the meaning of Saroda, the awakening of all. And the awakening of all is not only meaning of everyone in the society, so it's a participatory approach, but it means also that all dimensions of society have to come together and be awakened. The political dimension, the economic, the spiritual, the ecological, the cultural. They all play a role. And if you forget one of them, the whole falters. And it's the only way for Saroda, for Dr. Ariyaratne, and now for Vinaya Ariyaratne, who is presiding over the organization, and his team, to tap into the wholeness of society in order to create solutions which serve the whole of society. And I could see the power of a holistic approach in practice. And since then, we literally have become friends in co-creation, partners in learning and studying, working on, but also actualizing the work. And because I have one foot always in the transformative academic sense or world, this part of the academic world that also looks for embodying knowledge, not just teaching ivory tower knowledge, but really to bring it down to earth. I could see that here in Saroda was also a very profound dedication to knowledge creation. Tons of books have been written by the founder, and this is continuing through the current president, this deep search for knowledge as a living entity serving the continuous renewal of the organization and society. That brought me over and over back to Sri Lanka and to Saroda.
We continue the conversation with Professor Alexander Schieffer right after this short commercial break. Stay with us.
The People's Platform.
This is where dreams take flight, where stars are born, and the future of international cricket shines the brightest.
She is setting the stage alight!
16 nations will compete for World Cup glory in Malaysia.
She is putting on a show here.
And they are champions!
The ICC Under-19 Women's T20 World Cup 2025 begins January 18 on TV1.
ඒගොල්ලන්ට මේ අපිට කියන්න බෑනේ මේ අනේ හාල් ටික හොයලා දෙන්න කියලා.
අහන ප්‍රශ්නේ තමයි උත්තර දෙන්න ඔබතුමාත් අහපු ප්‍රශ්නෙට.
ඌ බලාපොරොත්තු කන්දක් දීලානේ ඇවිල්ලා තියෙන්නේ.
සදාකාලිකව ඒගොල්ලන්ට කොරායි කිඹුල්ලු බල ඉන්න පුළුවන්.
ජනතාව බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන අත් වශයෙන්ම ශනික යම්කි සහනයක්.
දැනට තියෙන රජයයි ඒ තිබිච්ච රජයනේ අතර අහසට පොළොව වගේ වෙනසක් තියෙනවා.
මොකද අපි දැක්ක මීට පෙරත් ඔය ජවනිකාව අපි දැක්ක ඔය නාට්‍ය අපි දැක්කා. කලබල වෙන්න එපා රොෂාන්, අපි ඔය වගේ ප්‍රශ්න කරන්න ආචාර්ය උපාධි සහතික නැතුණා කියලා කියන්න පුළුවන්ද?
රට එක පැහැදිලි කිරීමක් කරන්න අවශ්‍ය ඔබට තීරණය කරන්න පුළුවන්.
අපි හැමෝම එකතු වෙලා මේ රට හදමු.
දවස සතිය දිනපල සවස 6:30ට.
Our development era kickstarts from 2002-2005.
If you're off duty, right, you're entitled to do what you want. And Niresh, whether it's pluck coconuts or whether it's scraping the coconuts, they have the freedom to do that.
By having taxes on imports for the food on the poorest of the poor is a big problem.
I think economic inclusion of the rural people is very important to keep the economy going.
Government and state are two things.
So time to time we need restructuring. We can't go on. That is the main reason why NPP won.
Face the Nation every Wednesday at 9:30 p.m. on TV1.
Companies play better politics than the politicians of today. We are not supposed to play
with the people's expectation, then it will be a huge disaster.
When you're bankrupt and when you're going to bankruptcy, two different.
The grandfather is saying it is going to take this long. What does he know?
It's about the lack of sense of humor in Sri Lankans.
Issues that matter the most. Unfiltered discussions. Real answers. Face to face. Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on TV1.
මේ වසන්තේ මේ ආරාධනය විසේකාර දඟකාර හැඩකාර කුමාරයන්ට සහ කෝල කොමල මනලෝල කුමාරියන්ටයි මේ වසන්තේ සිරස වසන්ත කුමරා සහ කුමරිය ලෙස කිරුළු පළඳින්න දැන්ම සැරසෙන්න වයස අවුරුදු 18ත් 25ත් අතර කුමාරයන් සහ කුමාරියන් මෑතකදී ගත් ඡායාරූපයක් සමග පෙබරවාරි 20 වෙනිදාට පෙර අයදුම් කරන්න. ලිපිනය නිෂ්පාදක සිරස වසන්ත කුමරා සහ කුමරිය ස්ටයින් ස්ටුඩියෝ බොරුපන පාර රත්මලාන. පිවිසෙන්න අවුරුදු.sirasatv.lk. The People's Platform.
Welcome back. You're watching the People's Platform. I'm in conversation with Professor Alexander Schieffer. We're talking about the importance of creating an inclusive, regenerative, peaceful, just and joyful home for the diverse family of life on Earth. Professor Alexander, you also share the vision of co-creating a world that's a home for humanity, which you co-founded with your wife, the incredible performer, peace builder, Dr. Ramamani, who's also my university professor. Speak to us about it.
Yeah, so Nali, it was a discovery. It was a discovery that maybe I take you for a moment into the story also of transformative education that we did, because at one stage I invited university students to come to our home, and I convinced the university to say this course has to take place at home, because when we talk of societal transformation, the home we are creating outside, or the world we are creating, is a reflection of who we are inside. So any transformation that takes place that we want to affect in society needs to also happen within ourselves. The great Gandhi always spoke about be the change. You have to embody the change that you seek to drive. And hence the home environment, and now I'm talking about my home in the French countryside on a little mountain not far away from Geneva, in a place called the Oval Romain. We transformed Rama, my wife, Dr. Ramamani, and I transformed this home into a living campus. And we invited students in, and as we worked on new paradigms, on solutions for our world, for communities, for real life contexts, we also took students in a journey to connect in the home environment to their own, we call it Sonali, the inner home. To the dimension of who am I actually, what is really driving me, what is paining me if I look at the world, what is mine to do when I'm participating in societal or community transformation. And we notice how incredibly nurturing the environment of the home was, and out of that grew over time the term, this home is called a home for humanity, where you can show up in your whole humanity, but it's also looking for solutions for humanity's predicament, for the issues we are facing. So that actually was one dimension. And then we notice, this is the other important dimension, I'm passionate about how do we enable and catalyze change, how do we enable change makers to become that change agent that they want to become. And the home is something that we all share as a species. Everyone has a relationship to home, and my home, your home is, and in that sense it's even a subversive methodology, because my home can become the place where the transformation starts. And home doesn't have to be naturally as we know it, like mom and dad and child, that kind of home, but it can be the enterprise in which I'm working, the community initiative that I've started or that I'm about to begin, the kindergarten or the school or the university. And in fact, when I'm saying these examples, all of those are examples for real-life homes for humanity that are now working around the world together as a movement. There are now 70 homes for humanity on all continents, literally from 2 universities, fully-fledged universities in Zimbabwe, to Saroda, which is a community, an integrated community initiative with 15,000 villages in which it outreaches, to Sechem in Egypt, which is a 2,000 staff organic farm and an incredible impulse coming out of the Egyptian impulse. So I could go on and on. All kinds of different organizations are now homes, and home has become for us almost the central metaphor for transformation. Ultimately, to build home on earth. How do we build together, each one with his or her own impulse, together a shared home for humanity and all of life?
Professor, you also speak about creating a gift economy, a gifting philosophy that underpins your work as a new form of economic engagement. Elucidate that for us.
So in this particular way how we are working, I mean, we are traveling on the one home journey, home to home. Every home being a transformative impulse that we are studying and witnessing and sharing from. When you traveled home historically, home to home, you don't come and pay. You gift. You bring the gift of your presence, you receive the gift of hospitality. All cultures had this profoundly so. The guest was almost, sacred. It was provided for, and the guest came also with a gift, and had a story to share or came with gifts. So the exchange took place not so much in a financial transactional way, but it took place on other dimensions. The Home for Humanity journey is one where we harvest together knowledge and wisdom of our time from different, which is gifted through what we are calling the One Home University. We are building a university on the go. So we are gifting that knowledge. We are gifting the time of harvesting and surfacing this knowledge. In return, people support the journey through gifts. Some, you may call it fees, but we don't call it fees. In fact, is the gift that you give in response to the gift you receive. And in that sense, we are building a gift economy. So we are not traveling on donations. We are not traveling being state-funded or whatever. It's citizens who feel, who participate and make gifts in order to allow this journey to be carried through, while each and every one receives the gift of wisdom, knowledge, and Sonali is super important, of community, of co-creators around the world who are working with you, working together in building, each one locally, but together also on a planetary way, building the future in their societies and together on the planet.
Earlier on in the conversation, we spoke about the importance of harnessing the power of cultures. I'd like to draw your attention and get your perspectives on the importance of honoring the arts sphere. The arts enables us to collectively feel deeply whilst we seek solutions in this world that we're trying to heal. So you're a poet yourself. So speak to us about how the arts enriches us in ways that can't simply be defined.
Yeah, there's an ancient saying, the artist is the one closest to God. What it actually wants to say, I feel, is when we are in our artistic capacity, which I believe everyone has, not just those that we label artists, when we are in this artistic, creational capacity, we are at our best. We are closest to our highest self, our highest capacity. Artists, if they're not self-centered but connected actually to life, artists can help us see where the journey is going to. So artists have this capacity to sense into the emerging future. So we work, for example, on the journey with Earth artists, those artists who dedicate their life and their art actually to building the future, and who sense in what is actually in our collective human capacity, in our creative worlds. Artists are the renewers of culture, so back also to the cultural dimension. But our work is so much also an invitation to bring out the artist in each and every one of us. Because the artist is actually the imaginal capacity, if we can unleash or release and unleash this capacity in us, which allows us to imagine, which allows us to come us with new insights, new perspectives for the future, then we are on a way also of seeing opportunities. So for me also, by the way, a very important dimension of creating new knowledge, moving towards innovation, which can help us to build the future. Interesting enough, even the great scientists, from Einstein to many others, would say their great moments of innovation came in a rather artistic, imaginative moment, not in a purely mental moment. So I'm a great fan of this artistic side. And also in our educational work, we are teasing out, Rama and I, and together with our co-creators, what is the artist in ourselves. And Ramas, who have worked on theater of transformation, helps people to bring out these transformative impulses that they are ready to drive, to embody them already artistically. Before they may have even done the work on the ground, they are already stepping into that future self in an artistic way, which allows them actually to bring in the way the future into the present. And that's actually our shared role, bringing the emerging future into the now, so that new can be grounded. So that's how we come home, and that is how we build the future together. Well, I brought one poem with me because I'm a passionate poem. Poetry is my way also of listening to the unspeakable before I can even make things explicit. And I brought a little poem simply called Home. Beyond all fences, borders and divisions, where is home? Beyond all fences, borders and divisions, where is home? Each bird can build a nest. Where's mine? Where's yours? Homecoming is a pilgrimage to source. Homecoming is a pilgrimage to source. Though there is no map, no path, no destination, you are home the moment when your heartbeat and the heartbeat of all life are one. It could be now. It could be now.
We have come to the last 7 minutes of our conversation, Professor. I'd like your perspectives on how society is made up of individuals. Most of us are deeply disconnected within ourselves. We lack the skills to bridge this inner disconnect, this inner conflict. How must we go about doing that in an increasingly broken world?
I just took this moment of silence to tune us into this profound question. I've worked actually this last week with Saroda, and the word means, I mentioned it earlier, awakening of all So surely, as part of building a regenerative future, as part of that journey, we need to move into a new consciousness, into a fuller version of who we are, individually and collectively. The divisions we talked about, that we witness around the planet, we spoke about this in length. These divisions are in each one of us in different forms, very present. So how do we go about it? Your question. One important dimension is that we learn to bring outer development and inner development together. I would call for any organization, any initiative, anyone who wants to bring change, more regenerative futures forward, to equally emphasize the inner side, the development of the whole human being. Wholeness within is at the heart of wholeness without. There is no regenerative solution if we can't be regenerative within ourselves. We are life, we are part of it. Humanity is nature, is not outside of us. So this has to come in a way back home, relating it even back to the bird in the poem. Every bird can build a nest. We have kind of forgotten to build the nest in which we stand. So the development of the capacities of care, self-care, and to be able to bring the dimension of healing into our workspace, into our educational spaces, to my mind, are vital. Quite frankly, I find that's the most natural thing to do, and yet it's kind of so divided, these worlds. You know, the personal healing, the inner world has nothing to do normally in the organizational space, and yet it's an absurdity, because that's what we anyway bring to the table. I can't lock it home. So this, I think, is the big invitation for the future, that the awakening of all is also an awakening of everything within myself. And that means also the ability to deal with the more difficult sides that we are holding. Because if we don't do that, the difficult sides will continue to play out outside, as we see. So I think it's a calling to radically look into schools, kindergartens, universities, organizations, and to invite the capacity, enterprises, to that human development, the full human development, is at the very heart of entrepreneurial development, educational development, whatever we do. This is, to my mind, the only way. And the last thing is to see how do we do it also in locally and culturally authentic ways. So we are not just following, again, the next kind of Western recipe, but we find our own access point into this. The awakening of all. Come back to this at the end of our conversation.
Professor, most often we find that there is one dominant knowledge narrative or discourse that is rooted in colonialism. Your work encompasses the deconstructing of existing structures that harm humanity. Speak to us about this in the context of reshaping development.
Yeah. Another important question to respond to. At the heart of building new structures, reshaping development in an authentic way in our own localities, is the ability to construct our own knowledge. And that means, to a large degree, to deconstruct existing knowledge and to build our own processes of knowledge creation. I've written many books together with a colleague, a book on integral research, where we looked into ways how knowledge creation is taking place. And we noticed that most of the world is following Western empiricist research methodologies in order to create knowledge, which means we are perpetuating one existing mindset, stream of knowledge creation. which is very subtle. It's almost invisible. We're doing our best to create new knowledge, but we do it through a lens which is not ours. And that lens might be a very good one, but it's not complete if not complemented by others. So we need, in order to rebuild, to reconstruct future, we need to deconstruct and reconstruct knowledge. And this is at the very heart. And then knowledge, if you do that on an ongoing basis, becomes suddenly something which is alive. We are not following existing knowledge patterns. You know, we're all reading the same books, coming from the same author, but we are part and parcel of participatory knowledge creation processes. And we don't do knowledge and research on situations and on people, but we do it with, in a participatory, embedded, action research oriented way. That's how we can build futures, and that's a big field totally underestimated by our time. We do in isolation our little research works when we do our master's or bachelor or PhD thesis or whatever we do, rather than using these processes for participatory moments of knowledge creation where we work together in building knowledge that can also ultimately be actualized in reality, because knowledge which is not actualized, I come back to this, is irrelevant. It has ultimately has to reroute itself in the realities we live in, and then it becomes something very enjoyable as a living entity.
How do we hang on to and believe in hope for a beautiful tomorrow?
Took me a moment, Sonali, to really tune in to these questions, because one could quite frankly look rather hopeless into our future. I guess my key response is a return to life, to aliveness. I feel at the very heart of the human experience, it's not so much even purpose and objectives and all of this, it's about feeling alive, being alive in who I am, participating in the mystery that we are given, which is life, in whatever way it unfolds through each one of us. And that is the greatest good we have received, is being alive, being in life, being in the beauty of creation, which is unfolding through us, in our families, but in the nature which we are looking at. And that is our access point to call it hope, or call it falling in love again with what it means to be alive. I really feel that connection to the mystery is what it is all about.
Thank you, Professor Alexander Schieffer, for this incredibly beautiful conversation.
Thank you, Sonali.
And thank you for the work you do.
Thank you so much. Thank you to Sri Lanka. Thank you to Saroda. Thank you to the beautiful work that you are doing here.
Thank you. Thank you for watching us. We'll see you again next Friday. Good night.